you better get up and fight. All the enemies of liberty are always drawing near. Yeah, defend liberty before she disappears. Well, I got a lover named Liberty. Oh, we fit together so naturally. Yeah, gift from God given to me. Oh, she is the one divine beauty. Yeah, if I wanna keep her, I better treat her right. Oh, they come with liberty, you know you better get up and fight. Yeah, the enemies of liberty are always drawing near. Yeah, defend liberty before she disappears. Well, I got a lover named Liberty. Oh, before I was born, she was loving on me. Yeah, always teaching humanity. Without liberty, it's all slavery. Yeah, if I want to keep her, I better treat her right. Yeah, they give me liberty, you know you better get up and fight. Yeah, the enemies of liberty are always drawing near. Yeah, defend liberty before she disappears. Yeah, if I want to keep her, I better treat her right. Yeah, they give me liberty, you know you better get up and fight. Yeah, the enemies of liberty are always drawing near. Yeah, defend liberty before she disappears. Oh, protect liberty before she disappears. Yeah, defend liberty before she disappears.
Welcome to Crypt Rick's I've Been Thinking. What's this show all about? Well, it's all in the title. He enjoys interviewing people about issues that he finds interesting and which cause him to sit back and think. Cryptocurrency, true crime, the occult. No topic is off limits here. He has always enjoyed when people give their points of view or thoughts on different topics that they have researched. And what makes it all great is that it's their unique take on what is being discussed. For that reason alone, it makes it interesting to him. So take that walk down to his crypt. Make yourself comfortable. And just maybe, he will be discussing a topic that you have been thinking about. Here's your host, Crypt Rick.
Welcome back, everybody. Once again, we are here, and it can only mean Monday night here at Revolution.radio. If you are listening in, of course, we are in the crypt, and I am excited. We're going to have a great show. This is going to be a great topic that we're going to be bringing up, and I have a couple great guests that we're going to be bringing on very, very shortly to talk about something that is important, I think. I think it's really important, and I'm going to find it interesting because it's got a lot to do with what's coming up in just a couple days. And I think anybody that's got in a healthy relationship knows what I'm talking about. Maybe they don't, but we're going to get into it, and it's going to be a great topic. I really enjoyed having them on to break down what the origins of Halloween were, and I figured we have to keep this theme going. And every time we get into one of these major holidays, and of course I am talking about Valentine's Day, which is only a couple days away, I figured let's dive into this. What are the origins of this whole day? And I got to be honest, I don't know much about it. I'm going to be learning along with all of you listeners today because I really don't. I know what you guys know. You know, you got to go out, you get the flowers, the candy, the jewelry, all of that kind of stuff. I know what everyone else knows about this holiday, and I really don't know much more than that, to be, if I'm being totally honest. And so I'm excited to learn about this, and I hope you guys are too, because I always like learning where things originate from, their origins, and how it got from their origins to where we are today. And it was amazing with Halloween, how we broke that down. So I'm looking forward to doing Valentine's Day and then St. Patrick's Day and any of these holidays that have occult meanings and hidden stuff behind them. And so I'm very, very excited to do that. But before I get my guest on, I always let you guys know that here at Revolution.radio, it is listener supported, which means that it's your guys' generosity that keep all of us hosts doing our shows every day of the week. And that is so important to support right now, especially as I tell you guys, the other platforms are doing their best to censor people who are trying to get the truth out there. And it's getting worse. I talk to people every week that are having videos taken down, their channels taken down. And now apparently I'm hearing about YouTube, which is doing a weird thing where they want face recognition. And it's crazy. I just found out about this yesterday, to be honest. And I've heard about it from two people now, that if you want to do certain things on ScrewTube, I like to call it, you have to go and they want to face recognition you, or they give you a couple more options. But what they're doing is basically more control. What can I say? And it's just, this is the place that you have to support, is platforms like this where freedom of speech is alive and well. Any topic can be covered and you don't have to be worried about being censored or just anything taken down. So I really do appreciate everyone who is donating to keep us here. We're here 7 days a week, 24/7. Basically, we're always here. Shows are always going. Amazing hosts doing amazing content. And we wouldn't be here without you guys. Every penny donated goes right back into Revolution Radio, and it keeps us here because it's not cheap to keep a radio station up and running, as most people probably already realize. And there is lots of ways you can donate. Just head over to revolution.radio. At the top of the page, there is a donation section. They got you covered if you want cryptocurrency. If that's your thing, they got Bitcoin, Bitcoin Cash, and Ethereum. There's snail mail, there's direct pay, and there's Patreon if you want to set up a monthly amount to donate. That's awesome. You know, you set an amount you want to donate, they take care of the rest. And then that way you are helping to fight for freedom. This is a way to at least get involved. Not everybody wants to do a radio show. Not everybody wants to do videos, all of these things. There is other ways that you can contribute to getting this message out there and talking about it. And one way you can do that, if you don't want to be on there, is support the people that are out there doing it and creating the content. Everybody is valued and needed. So I always want to start my show by thanking our donators, because we wouldn't be, it's just the truth, guys. We would not be here without you, and that means so much to all of us here. So thank you so much. And I'm going to keep being here every Monday for you guys, and Monday and Thursday with my co-host Jonathan. So thank you guys. Hopefully you guys are having the start to a great week. I know I am. It's actually cold here, and we're expected to get snow, which is awesome. I usually complain about snow, as you guys know, but at least it's normal for this time of year, because in the last few days it's been mild and anything but normal. So, hey, I welcome at least something that's normal and familiar, which is a little bit of snow and the colder temperatures, which we did have today. The cold temperatures anyway. Snow's on the way. So that's my little update of the weather. And I did ask, somebody asked me about the drumming, because I was telling people that we were doing my live drumming lessons on YouTube, which is Friday. Every Friday from 12:15 to 1:15 p.m. And it is the YouTube channel is Drumming for Nonprofit, and he's switched it over to Twitch to do my live lesson, because we're getting into playing along to some music, and he's really worried about copyright strikes. So he moved it over to Twitch, the same name. I will put a link in the chat room for you guys. So please head over to Twitch and support my teacher. He's amazing. Carlos is doing so much for getting drum lessons and equipment out to people that need it, and he's putting it in schools and everywhere. So anyone, he's really trying to do a lot to introduce drumming to people who can't afford it and who are just, they're not able to get the equipment or pay for the lessons. So he volunteers his time. Every donation that he gets goes right back into putting equipment and lessons into people's hands. So please go support him if you can. I will leave a link, as I said, before the end of the show, and go check it out. Also check out his YouTube channel as well. He's got great content there, and your support is greatly needed. I would love to have you guys there every Friday in the chat room and asking questions and just watching me learn my craft, which is amazing. And I will not babble too much about drumming because I seem to do that now. I get excited and I just start talking about drumming. So anyways, that's what I wanted to get out of the way. A little bit of house cleaning there. And so I'm going to welcome my guest. I'm excited. This is going to be a fun topic. It's going to be an important topic, as I was saying. So welcome Will Keller once again to the show, who's been here many times. And also Logan Hart, who I did have on to break down Halloween. So welcome, guys.
Thanks, Rick.
Hello.
Appreciate it. Glad to be back.
It's going to be a great one. I'm really, whoever wants to take this one, as I was saying, I'm like most people, I don't know much about this holiday coming up. We're talking about Valentine's Day. And as I was saying at the intro, I know what most people know. I know the whole, consumerism behind it, where people are out buying all the Valentine's Day things and how they're commercialized it and selling it to people. But I don't know about the origins very much. So who wants to take this and start? Let's get this started. Where did this all start?
Well, I'll go ahead and start. I think I think it would be good to kind of lay some groundwork. I know we touched on this last episode with the origins of Halloween, and we'll bring it back down to just nature in general, right? Yes, these holidays have origins in many different cultures, but there's a starting point. There's that 0 point that's actually based in reality, and there is just through observation of our ancestors, ancient ancestors, observing nature, observing the cyclical characteristic of nature, the seasons, the sun, the moon, astrology, etc., and having a good grasp and an accurate perception of just these attributes and the cycles of nature. So I think it might be good to kind of just touch on just this time period. Because we're going to talk about the origins of Valentine's Day, and also just several days before that is considered the Celtic pagan holiday of Imbolc, which is really just it's the midpoint between winter and spring. So you have the winter solstice, and then you have the spring equinox. So Imbolc, and I think Valentine's Day is directly related to this time period, because this time period is when we're approaching and crossing over to the second half of winter towards spring. So it's starting to get warmer. We're getting more light in the daytime. And this has, number one, huge energetic components to it. But just even in the natural world, the birds, their migration patterns start to change. They come out. It's also February is the mating season for birds and all types of other animals. So there's things in nature, the real world, that we can observe, and then we correlate as human beings. We recognize these patterns, and then we correlate this to stories and interpretations, and that turns into, you implement that into a society, whether that's ancient or modern. Obviously, in the modern day, most of the festivals and quote unquote holidays come from ancient times, some form or fashion.
Right.
So there's this communion aspect to it. So I think that's a good place to start, to first recognize the inherent time period that February is.
Right.
I'll let
Very
Logan
important.
touch on that if you want.
Absolutely. Go ahead, Logan.
Yeah, that's a great place to start, Will. great way to kind of set the table as we're getting into this, because I've noticed there's probably going to be a lot of very similar themes with this one that we got into on the last one with the Halloween. As we're just moving through all of these holidays and looking at the historical precedents of them, and if it is anything to do with paganism, then it most likely is exactly what you said. It's something that's synchronizing or punctuating with actual natural cycles, and especially the movement of the seasons. So yeah, it was a very interesting time to research for me. I didn't know a lot about the background of this holiday, especially, and it's one that's really kind of got a lot of mystery and ambiguity to it. It seems like nobody fully agrees on really what the one origin of this particular holiday might be. Most people will tell you, there was an ancient Roman holiday called Lupercalia that was in honor of Lupercus, the fertility god, also known as Faunus, and which was essentially the Roman equivalent of the Greek god Pan. So the faun, that's, you have Faunus and the faun, half man, half faun, playing the flute and all this kind of thing, with usually running around with like a big erection because he was a fertility god, and so this is kind of where the story begins. Some people would argue this is not the roots of Valentine's Day, the modern holiday, because, well, it has nothing to do with that. Other than you might think like fertility, could be some connection there. But I think it's more important to just observe the time periods. Like, again, like what Will said, is like, they're just stacking these traditions on top of each other based on particular dates in the calendar year. And then there's a lot of changing and rebranding happening to where it might not look like there's this continuous stream, but it's all built around the same day, or the same, very close time, because Lupercalia was actually February 15th. And then they implemented Saint Valentine's Day later on the 14th, but I don't think it's any coincidence that it's, just sort of like meant to be a replacement. But I'll just explain a little bit about this Lupercalia.
Yes, please do.
Festival, and then I will let somebody else add to it. But essentially, it was, yes, a fertility festival, but specifically more to do with animals. This is something, kind of surprising to people that wouldn't expect that necessarily. It wasn't about human fertility. It was, more to do with animals, livestock, and so they would sacrifice goats and dogs, which are known for their high sexual instincts, right? And then they would take the skins of these creatures, these slain animals, dip them in the blood, and they would run around town like slapping slapping the women with these bloody skins. And as bizarre as that sounds, oftentimes the women would be lining up to get struck, because they believed that it would basically give them favor in their own fertility, basically, so that they would be bearing children.
Wow.
So there was all sorts of other parts of this, just different practices, maybe not all around the exact same time period, but generally it was like many festivals, a lot of feasting and drinking, and this one in particular seemed to have a lot of sexuality, and there was sort of like a lottery where they would just draw different women's names, and they would be sort of like partnered up for the night, and oftentimes would end up leading to relationships and marriage. So that's kind of interesting.
That is. Wow. I didn't know any of this, guys. I really didn't. Like, this is so fascinating to me. Like, I'm writing, as you guys are talking, I'm writing down all the names that you're saying in that so I can dive into this even deeper on my own, because I heard something similar with the slapping of the women. I think I heard it was like a horse tail or something like that, or like a something like that. That was dipped in
Right.
like red in blood, and they would, yeah, something very similar, but it's really spotty memory. I'm going way back, but I heard something similar somewhere that this was
Right.
part of their fertility ritual, which I find this is fascinating. And like what Will was saying with the animals, I can definitely vouch for that. That right now, because we've had a few warm days here, the animals are out and about, and you can just tell they're looking for a mate. They're frisky and they're all over. So I find it very fascinating what we talk about. And this, like Will said, this felt kind of bleeds into what we were speaking about with Halloween, that, they have these origins in nature. And that's where I'm fascinated by. I'm also fascinated how they get twisted from where, what you guys are talking about to where we are in modern. I like to kind of dive into that because it's kind of similar in a way. I guess you guys were kind of saying, right? Like maybe the romance part of it or something. There's a very, I think, a thin veil, like a thin line leading back to origins, but it's just got crazy like everything else. So what do you like? What do you want to add to that? Well, I think this is fascinating what I've just heard so far.
Yeah, Logan touched on some really good points.
Absolutely.
And this is kind of a mysterious holiday. Now, I will say that you just do a regular YouTube search, you're gonna get similar videos with similar information, but you always have to question like the source of that information. So the Catholic Church has a lot to say about really modern history in general. So but as far as Lupercalia, the festival, right? And this was a celebration of fertility. And, there was all kinds of stuff going on. Like Logan said, they had like the lottery type of thing, right? Where
That's
usually
so
the
crazy.
festival was the 13th of February to the 15th. So it was a couple days. And, you pull a ticket, you get your partner, and you're with that partner for the whole festival. A lot. And it was, I mean, it was common that relationship would develop and marriage would come out of that. So the Roman Emperor Glaucius, he saw a problem because when it came to soldiers going to war, if you were married, then you couldn't enlist into the war, right?
Oh,
So he saw an uptick in marriage, and so it was kind of it was limiting the young men population for the soldiers. So he actually made it illegal um, to get married during a certain time period. And then
wow.
on the rise of
I believe it
um,
was illegal for soldiers they had to be single. They weren't allowed to be married.
that's correct.
Wow, that's
Exactly.
crazy.
Exactly. So, during the whole kind of the early stages of the transition of the Holy Roman Empire, right? This is the third to, well, closer to, yeah, about the 3rd century. There was a Saint Valentinus, and this man was obviously he was a bishop, a priest in the Catholic Church, and he was marrying couples in secret. And he got arrested a few times, and then finally he was tortured and beheaded and put to death. And there's all kinds of mysterious lore and stories that come with that. Certain
Yeah.
notes that he gave a blind girl, that he cured her blindness, and it said from your Valentine. And so, we get these Valentine Day cards. But
I was going to ask about those. That's interesting.
Yeah.
fast forward to
It's
the full transition of the Holy Roman Empire. This was about the 5th century, and they made Saint Valentine obviously a martyr, and they named it a holy day, a holiday, and that was February 14th. Obviously, I mean, a common theme that we've talked about even on last episode is the rebranding and the transitioning from the pagan culture into the Catholic Christian culture,
hmm
right? So
Yes.
that's where Valentine's Day, the name, comes from.
Wow.
Yeah, and it's again, it's very easy to observe a similar thing like with the Halloween thing, where the origins were and the current form that we see, and especially with like all of the iconography, so like you think of Halloween, you think of jack-o'-lanterns and bats and witches and all that, and that was more kind of grafted on later during the hyper commercialization of even just since the industrial age. And that's a similar kind of thing with this, I would say. All of the roses and chocolates and cupids and all of that really didn't come around till way recently, when the corporations really started pushing that forward, and all of the imagery of love and these kind of like symbols of that. But yeah, there's as far as the stories of Saint Valentine's, even that there's so much ambiguity. Apparently there were multiple Saint Valentines that were martyred, and nobody knows exactly even which one it was that was named after this holiday. And there's several different versions of that story of that he healed. It was the jailer's daughter that was keeping him captive, that he supposedly healed her blindness just by, of course, speaking the name of Christ and all of that, just kind of to corroborate the whole holiness of Christianity and this kind of thing. And
wow,
it's really interesting. There's so much hearsay around this holiday, yet it's so solidified in our modern culture. But it's like it's difficult to even really trace it back to any particular thing or one definitive, this is where it came from. It's like all these different versions, and it was like this holiday was so different, so maybe it was kind of based on that, but not really. And then this other guy that may or may not have been, the correct saint. It's really fascinating how it's like we take these things for granted as far as just traditions and practices that we just do year after year without just having any idea of whether it's based on anything at all.
That's right. Then that's what I was thinking about before this show. I was thinking, like I'm like I was saying, I'm very fascinated where the origins of things, like where does this all start, and how, and then how it's changed and morphed over the years, and over time, and it's fascinating with this one because like you and Will are both saying, Logan, that there's not a definitive um line that you can trace. There's a lot of lore and stories, and you don't really, so I'm sure each one will bring you down a different path and a different thing, but I find it really fascinating. And what I wanted to ask, and is it like, I'm thinking about worldwide, does the holiday go by other names, or is it like, maybe you guys don't even know this because I don't know this. I'm probably going to ask some silly questions, but I'm generally curious, so I'm going to ask. If this holiday goes by other names, or is there other lores behind it, or is it basically somewhere what we're talking about in this vein?
Well,
I believe.
Go on. Yep.
Again, I'm certainly no expert. I've just done some research. It was called Valentine's Day via the Holy Roman Church, as Will has said, and that this was, I believe the 5th century or so when that kind of started. But it wasn't until like the 1600s or something like that they started kind of migrating and bringing that to like America, for example.
Interesting. Okay, I get it.
So
Did you want to add
a
anything?
very long and slow process.
Right. Yeah, it's just crazy to where it is now. Like I have my whole like questions about even what we like the origin, like what it simplifies now is a whole great topic, I think, because I just wonder, I'm just curious, like at least I know now about the Valentine's Day, like Be My Valentine and all that, cards and stuff like you guys just brought up. At least I understand that now, because I was going to ask you about that, but I just wonder about all these the symbology behind it all. I'm made up by corporations, I'm sure, for money and for what they're using it for now. But it's just weird how they got this imagery and from where the origins are, which is in nature. It's like so far to the other side from what it originally started as. So, do you want to add anything, Will? Because this is This is really interesting.
Sorry, I was on mute. Yeah, no, it is fascinating, and just through my recent research, I did find that even in different areas during this similar time, China had a I'm not even going to try to pronunciate it. It's
Okay.
Qixi festival. This is a 2,000-year-old festival, right?
Wow.
So its origins was from the Han Dynasty, but it's similar that it has its fertility and a romantic love festival. Same thing in Korea and Japan. They have similar festivals as well. And actually, in Brazil, I'm not too sure how old this one is. They have a similar. They call it Lovers' Day, but that is obviously Christianity and Catholicism had a huge influence on that type of territory. So that's based on a different saint, Saint Anthony, which is a feast day, but Lovers' Day. So. But regardless, the characteristics, they come back to nature, this time period of we're approaching spring. Spring is on the horizon, so to say. So this is where the fertility and the birth is starting to happen, and the increase in light. So those are the common characteristics. Of course, it's something very different now in the modern time. And I think there's a lot more darker aspects psychologically and energetically.
I want to get into
now,
that.
But like Logan said, and I agree 100%. It's like, in society, do we understand the stuff that we celebrate, the stuff that we apply our energy towards? Right? It's like, I mean, the Super Bowl was a great example. Just this this is one of the most watched programs on television. You're talking about millions of people watching, all putting their intention and focus and energy into one event. That's the same thing as a festival or a celebration, and that has huge power energetically. So when we look at Valentine's Day, we have a huge symbol of Valentine's Day is obviously the Cupid, right? Well, the Cupid represents Eros, which is from the Greek tradition, which is the son of Aphrodite, and he is the god of love, right? Or Venus, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's the same.
Juno as well.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and it's interesting, right? Cupid. Now, Catholicism came around and started to depict Cupid as a baby, which I find extremely interesting. They do that in the Greek mythology. It was seen as a man.
Right.
Yeah, he would shoot you with a golden arrow, and you would fall in lust, in love, and that's what Eros is, right?
Erotica. Yeah.
Yep, exactly.
Oh, okay, I get it. All right.
So this form of Greek love is romantic love, lustful love. It's that youthful love where you're young and you have your first relationship, and there's intimacy.
Hormones are flowing.
Yep.
Exactly, intimacy, and then it kind of wears off. So it symbolizes like you got struck by an arrow right in your heart. Cupid has wings. You take flight. You're high off the love and the infatuation and the erotica, and then typically that wears off, right? The 1 year honeymoon phase.
Love spell.
Exactly, and this is why I find the Greek forms of love so fascinating and empowering, right? Because we use this word love
to mean all of it.
Mean
it's so
all
ambiguous.
Kinds of things.
Like let's break down the word love, right?
Yeah,
the word everybody uses.
And the Greeks
all the
defined 8 forms of love, with 3 overarching main categories, and it goes into kind of there's subcategories as well, and that's important. I mean, we look at Valentine's Day now; it is directed towards the youth mainly. Well, across all ages, but mainly through the youth and the teenage times. But this is also a time period where suicide hits a spike. Like a lot of people commit suicide. Depression goes up as well because we've all been conditioned and programmed that this is the day, the holy day where you need to have a lover. You need to express your love to your partner or to someone. And so there's a lot of remnants from the Lupercalia festival that we still use today. The cards, and all kinds of stuff. The
Cupids
erotica.
that turned into a baby, which that's interesting that you brought that up, Will. Like, how did that? Why? Like, it's just one of those questions,
And yeah, it's kind of odd too. I mean, I remember growing up in very young, in early grade school, like second and third grade, they made a big deal out of Valentine's Day.
Yep.
It was a whole class activity that we're all writing our cards and picking our Valentine and giving it to one another. It's almost kind of weird. It's like kids are too young to even be thinking about that stuff, but yet we're all being almost indoctrinated with that at a very young age.
Yep.
It makes you have to wonder why.
I was the same way. In my public school, it was a big thing. Everybody would make these, like at a construction paper, you make these hearts, and then we would hang them up. And then through the course of the month, people would go around and secretly, supposedly give you Valentine's Day. And, you could tell the popular kids because they had like a million of them. And then the kids that weren't so popular had half of that. But it was a really, now that you talk about, like we're talking about it, it's like, why? So like that's really interesting, the programming that's going in, because it was like it's like Logan said, it was, and I'm sure for you too, Will, it was in public school. We were young when we started this, like had no idea what we were really celebrating, or it was just a way to get more Valentine's Day cards. Interesting.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
I mean, it's Valentine's Day in America is an $18 billion industry. Think about that.
Wow.
That is crazy. I mean, anyone can observe this by going into a Target or a Walmart or a major grocery chain and just seeing the aisles upon aisles of just candy, cards. It's all based in materialism, and it's kind of portraying this a fake version of love. Looking at it from light and dark, the arrow through the heart, totally materialistic. You could see the arrow through the heart as almost like a stake through the heart, right? Like the killing of care or the wounding of care as well.
Nice.
Yeah, did you want to add anything, Will? Or sorry, Logan, about the cards or anything? I thought you wanted to say something.
Yeah, you just observing that there's, some say that it came from the note left to, by Saint Valentine to his lover that said, your Valentine or whatever. I also heard it said that when the Holy Roman Catholic Church was further implementing this, that it was sort of a like they took the concept of the lottery where women's names were being drawn, but they Christianized it, as they always do, right? And just sterilized it, and it became children that would draw the names of different saints that they were supposed to be emulating when they drew that name.
Wow, I never heard of that.
And then way later, this was probably a few hundred years ago. I forget the woman's name, but there was some lady that wanted to bring this tradition to America and just thought it was super quaint or whatever. Maybe, I don't know. This is just hearsay, but she essentially started a business that was all about Valentine cards, and it blew up, and that was supposed to be a big contributing factor to the popularization of this tradition.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Oh, I imagine the money that lady made. Oh my God.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking like the money that lady would have made.
It's funny, just looking at the themes here, though, like the costs, the money spending we brought up with the Halloween thing. I don't remember what the number was from Halloween, but
it was big.
The number, Will said 18 billion. My search said in 2022 it was 27 billion.
Wow.
So that maybe Will's was like a previous year, because I'm sure it's going up every single year. There's more people, just as a baseline, there's more population, more people growing of age, and I'm sure just the overall like consumerism is continuing to expand as well. So yeah, it's just it definitely tells you something that starts so like grassroots earth and nature oriented, that gets so almost the polar opposite over
Right.
hundreds and hundreds of years. It gets bastardized and just monetized and commercialized.
Yeah, and that's the thing that like the story, like what we're speaking about, to me is resonates way more with me about how it's connected to nature, and it's such a cooler story, and its origins are way cooler to me, and I hope to my listeners and we're to the people that are listening to what they've turned it into. I think what we're speaking about is way more interesting, and it just resonates because it's connected to nature. And to me, I wish that that's what they would have taught us. I never heard of it. They never told any of us, at least not me in my school, anything of this, origins of this or any of these holidays. It was kind of like, this modern day stuff that really has no real, it's not really, doesn't mean anything. It's so commercial. But I wish they would teach this, what we're speaking about, because I think it's way more fulfilling and interesting.
Absolutely.
And they just don't. They do, and then yeah. So great point. Like this is really, I want to kind of get into, like you were saying too, Will, about how they've, the darker side of this, because I did a show last year with a guest, and we kind of got into the whole diamond thing, because a lot, they now I see, you see all these diamond commercials, and they're just, I mean, they're really hammering right now for Valentine's Day, I think, and so I mean, you think that's another dark aspect. And a lot of people might say, well, what do you mean by dark? Well, it's definitely connected to this holiday. And that's a whole dark thing going on when you think about this, and how they've manipulated people and twisted this, what we're speaking about, into this consumer buying diamonds and all this. It's just really weird.
Yeah, well, ultimately it's programming and conditioning. They want to influence men and women, their preferences, their tastes, their likes, their dislikes, because ultimately that's epigenetics, epidysgenics, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if they can influence the preferences, the romantic preferences and likes of men and women, primarily women, right? Because the men are going to seek the women. So if you can infiltrate and influence the preferences of women, then for sure, then you're directly influencing the reproductive process, the breeding process, right? Mm-hmm. So for instance, here's an example. Instead of a strong masculine men, that's frowned upon by, modern women today, I mean, not a blanket statement, but the majority of women in culture, modern Western culture, right? A man needs to be more feminine, needs to be more passive. The woman needs to lead. So, and then they get together and they have children, and they program and condition their children as well. So bringing it back to Valentine's Day, and even the Lupercalia festival, which, it was in reverence to ultimately to Pan, which Pan represents the animalistic base consciousness for the human being in nature. So what do I mean by that? I mean about the animalistic side of us, the characteristics of just base consciousness and how we operate instinctually. And this is why during the festival it was very common to have orgies and all this kind of stuff, right? Mm-hmm. So from what history says, take that for what it is.
Right.
But that's not to be like looked down upon. When you do a lot of research on this and you come across the Lupercalia festival, you're going to get a lot of Christian influence talking about Satanism and how these festivals were really bad and there was sacrifices and it was demonic and all this kind of stuff. That is programming and conditioning. Does anyone know nowadays exactly how it went down? Absolutely not.
I agree.
We're talking about thousands of years ago, and the information we do have is highly influenced by a bias, right? A religious bias.
Yeah.
So, but the base consciousness, this animalistic side of us, which is what Pan represents, right? Half man, half fawn. That's something to recognize and understand that is a huge part of our evolution, but is not where we want to be ruled from. Obviously, we want to master the lower human level of consciousness and being, and we want to move up on the scale. But moving up does not mean leaving behind. Right? It's a part of us. I'm talking about self-mastery, where we have that aspect to us. It's integrated, and it's also appreciative. You know, I mean, so the psyop comes when they are the misinformation and the influence of just what love is and sex. Because you can influence both of those two categories, then you are absolutely conditioning society socially. And that has long-term effects for sure.
I agree. I totally agree. Do you want to add anything, Logan?
No, not to what he just said.
Okay, perfect. All right. I just want to make sure, I want to give you an opportunity because I want to make sure I get both your guys' thoughts, because as I was saying, I really find this interesting and powerful information, and I'm glad that I got both of you on here. I'm so appreciative that you guys came on here to talk about this, and I think people need to hear it. I think a lot of people are just stuck in what everybody thinks this holiday is and doesn't really, and I want to get to the origins, which we're doing. And I think I agree with you, Will, that they are really, the marketing is, at least from what I can see, I don't typically watch TV, but I mean, it's on in the background. My wife watches it, and I'll hear commercials, and they're hammering right now on the men, especially, like, that's why I brought up diamonds and stuff like that, because they're basically selling that. They're really going at the men, like, you know, show how much your woman, you know, your mate, how much you love her. And, you know, the more money you spend on these diamonds, the more you love her. That's what they're selling this whole deception as. And it's just fascinating how you brought that up, Will, how they're steering. It's very powerful what they're doing, and they are definitely manipulating us on so many different levels, but especially on love. I think that's something that people need to realize.
Yeah, how many? I mean, in modern society, I mean, in relationships nowadays, I mean, if you don't buy a gift for your partner on Valentine's Day, you don't spend $28 on a dozen red roses or buy that diamond or gift, you're gonna be in big trouble. Exactly.
Yeah.
It's looked on like you don't love me. Like, love is not a fleeting event.
Right. Yeah.
Right. Love is action. Love is longevity. So it just it says a lot to the awareness, and really it says a lot to just what values that people hold.
Yeah. You make a good point, man. Like, you think about that, right? Too. Like, love is something that's continual, and it's not just one day. And it's crazy how many people probably go by that mindset. They'll go out and buy the roses and the chocolates and the jewelry, and then okay, but what after the holiday? Like, I mean, to me, it should be something that's, you know, love is something that is a daily thing between people. But apparently, hey, what do I know? I'm just like, this is crazy. Like, the money that people are spending on this holiday, and just this weird version of love. And it really gets me actually mad in a lot of ways, how they, as I was saying earlier, how they take this what we're speaking about in nature and how they've twisted it so far. And Logan even said it, how they brought it right to the opposite end, which they seem to do with everything. That's just their shtick kind of thing, is they take anything that is in nature and they don't create anything new. They just twist it and morph it into something that it's not. It's not. And so I think I'm glad we're covering this, because maybe it'll make people start to realize that this is just another manipulation on people.
That's a great point, because it's not just about the roots, the historical roots, the origins. That is important as well, but then also what we're doing now is sort of deconstructing the philosophical implications around the modern practices and what that is saying, and the place that has in society. I see it's a very similar vibe to Christmas, where Valentine's Day is all about your significant other mostly, or I mean primarily, it is solely focused on that. Whereas Christmas, it's the same kind of idea, but oftentimes more for children. So it's like, the more I spend on Valentine's Day, that's how much I love my person, right? Like if you spend $20 and like, she'd be like, oh, that's all I'm worth to you, really? Know? And then the kids have this kind of entitlement on Christmas. And then and I've seen my own friends fall victim to this, where they're like literally taking out credit cards, maxing everything out just for this holiday, so that they make sure that their kids know how much they care. And it's almost like this psychological proof to themselves. Like, I care about my kids so much, like I would do anything for them, and I would overextend myself financially even to this degree, just so that they know that they're loved. And it's a very sick way of thinking, that your kids aren't going to know that you love them unless you're buying them a bunch of like plastic toys and stuff. Like, it's not about the time that you spend with them, quality time and love and attention that you give them, teaching them lessons and life skills. Where's that? You know what I'm saying?
Right. That's real knowledge. Like that, you're right. And I have friends too. I think all of us have friends that have fallen prey to exactly what Logan is saying. Like, it's this, the more you spend, the more you love the person. I'd like to maybe get into the second hour too with you guys, like, the mind control and the social engineering, and that's behind this. I mean, that's what we're up against. And I try to tell people that, like, we really have to be aware of what we're up against and how they influence and steer people and society. They're masters of it. We've seen it. I mean, I hope people see it. If they don't, I don't know where they are. I don't understand where people are if they don't see this by now, how they are steering people and influencing. And for me, I always say this, and I'm sure people are sick of me saying it, but COVID was a big wake-up call for me in a lot of ways. I knew there was all this deception going on, and I had a pretty good understanding of it, but I didn't realize how powerful the mind control was until I saw what they did with COVID, and just how quickly people fell in line. It was disturbing, and it was actually what got me into the game. I was just like, wow, like, they shut the world down. And I always say that, like, I always tell people that, because people are like goldfish and they forget stuff and they move on to the next thing, and then you don't think about it. And I will always bring it back to that they shut the world down, and people need to be, that's awesome force that we're up against. And it's a very evil force that we're up against. But sorry, I'm kind of got off on a rant there, but it's just, it ties into this whole, how they're steering people. And Logan said it perfectly. You did too, Will, that people, the more money you spend on this holiday that we're speaking about, Valentine's Day, and then Christmas, which Logan brought up, this more, it's all about just it's hollow. It's not, what does spending money have to do with love? It is. It's all a transaction. So what do you, I'm sorry, like I said, I went on a rant there, but what do you think, Will? Like, I'd like to get into this deeper in the second hour, how the mind control is that they're steering us, that this is we're up against.
Yeah, you both brought up excellent points, and it's very much materialism, and yeah, I think materialism, that word gets thrown around a lot without kind of people kind of engaging on the deeper aspects of that. When you are locked into materialism, you're disconnected from the awareness of nature and yourself, because now you're focused on just the physical realm, the realm of the effects. So you can look at these holidays, and they're all highly focused on materialism. That does something to the psyche. You could look at it as far on an energetic component as a current. Now you have the majority of the population walking one way in the current. To recognize the current and step out of it, that's where the power is. And you do that through educating yourself and embodying truth and true spirituality, because that current is the matrix of perception, of control, influence, conditioning, and programming. They just want people to keep walking this current where they think love is a material object, where they don't understand energy, where they're only stuck in the lower mind, the base consciousness, just blowing the flute, just walking, in the current, right?
Yeah.
So it's total control. I mean, you could see it even with the allegory and the symbolism of Pan blowing the flute with the animals following behind him, right? That's what Pan does. Or the Pied Piper.
Yep.
Exactly. This is what social engineering is all about. It's all about to disconnect individuals from truth, from the real. And that means from themselves, of course.
It reminds me of that Led Zeppelin lyric, "The Piper is calling you to join him."
Yeah, you're right.
The Stairway to Heaven.
There you go.
Yep.
Yeah, and then also the popular profile picture with the NPC. You've probably seen it, and it's got the banner that says, "I support the current thing."
Yeah.
As you were talking about that, Will, that's really interesting, because it's like current means, chronologically, the current thing that's happening now, but it's also the current, like, of the flow of energy.
Yep.
And you're caught up in the current thing. You're swept up in the the macro movements instead of kind of marching to your own drum.
Yep. Absolutely. Yeah, I agree. And you see people and you see it everywhere. People want the latest fad or the latest product or whatever it is. Like that's what people are really focused in on. And that's what they kind of aim at people. That's where they steer people. It's always got to have the newest thing or the latest thing. And it's just, it's this consumeristic mindset that people have. And it really is shocking when you see it. You're like, it's just like, wow, when you pull yourself away and kind of take a big pitch, like a big look at it. And I always say I've been swept up with it too in my younger years. And even, you got to be very cautious of it, what's going on, because they, as I keep saying, they hit you from so many different angles that, you got to keep checking in on yourself and checking yourself, because they know what they're doing. And it's really a great topic. I think people have to become more aware of just how controlled they are and steered. That's the best way I can put it, is steered. They're definitely influenced, guided, and that's like a amazing topic too, I think, so people become aware of this.
I just want to say that I don't think there's anything wrong with traditions necessarily. It doesn't mean you're a sheep just because you're doing something that's going along with it. But it's interesting this is coming up, because I was just listening to a YouTube video recently. I don't remember which one it was, but they were talking about traditions being they're supposed to be based on something worthwhile, something based in truth. That's why they are traditions, because they're useful in some way. And so it's not about being anti-tradition or just going along with whatever tradition just because it's tradition. It's about understanding what you're part of and why it's a tradition, and then deciding for yourself, does this actually have any value and merit to be worthy of my energy year after year? What is the purpose that it's actually serving?
Great point.
That's the key.
Yeah, and I'm just like, that's a great way
well
to wrap.
said.
Yeah, well said, Logan. And that's a great way to wrap up the first hour, guys. Please, I hope you guys stick around for hour two because I mean, this is a great conversation, one that needs to be had. And so please stick around, guys. Hour two is coming up. We're going to be taking a short break, as you guys know, 3 4 minutes, and then we will be back with hour two. My special guest, Will Keller, Logan Hart. Please stick around, guys.
All right. Thanks for listening while we take that short break here at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. And yeah, we're going to get back to your host.
Welcome back, everybody. Hour two, Crypt Ricks. I've been thinking, and what are we thinking about this evening? Well, if you were listening the first hour, you know it is Valentine's Day, just a couple days away, guys. So I hope you're enjoying this conversation. We're digging into the origins of it and the traditions of it, and just really breaking it apart and looking at it and where it's where it started and where it's ended up. And I think it's been a fascinating first hour. I have two amazing guests on. Of course, we have Will Keller on, who has been on several times, and of course, Logan Hart, who has been on a couple times as well. Amazing. You can check out The Wizard Factory on YouTube, and you can find Logan Hart's channel there. He's got amazing interviews there. And some amazing content there. So please check out his YouTube channel. And I'll make sure at the end of the show that both gentlemen let you know where you can find all of their work. And also you can look on YouTube for Will Keller. And he's got amazing stuff there too, presentations and interviews and a lot of things going on. And so welcome back, guys, for the second hour. It's just, you guys are putting out some amazing content. During the break, I was just kind of looking at both of your channels, and you're getting it in. You're putting the work in, man. It's there. Some good stuff.
Appreciate that.
Thanks, Rick.
Awesome stuff here. Yeah, and what a great conversation. And we kind of ended on something I think is important that Logan you brought up is traditions and how these are important. I think a lot of people are very their traditions mean a lot to them, and they have a lot of history behind them and stuff. And I think it's important that you did bring that up at the end of the first hour. That it doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad thing, but just to kind of understand it, where they come from, and be aware of it. So I think that's important that you brought that up.
I would like to touch on that.
Sure.
Add to what Logan said. I think what Logan said is probably one of the biggest takeaways in this episode, and for someone to understand. When you think about tradition and culture, right? Culture means to cultivate. It's a neutral thing. There's always going to be culture because we're going to have a group of human beings, and that's really the condition of how that group of human beings interacts, right? It's all the details of that. So tradition is a part of it. It all depends on what we are cultivating, right? Our culture. But what Logan was touching on is the reason why to have this awareness of these holidays, to know anything, is free will. Mm-hmm. The whole system of programming, conditioning, and control wants to get an individual to abdicate their free will. Free will must be activated. If it's not activated, then it's instinctual. It's a conditioned response. Like if you step on a dog and the dog just turns around and bites you, right? It's not thinking about it. It just acts. And this is where they want people to be at. They want people just to react instead of respond. So the information that we are unfolding today, it gives someone an awareness of this time period and what the culture is. And then you have the conscious awareness, and then you can exercise your conscience and make the choice to either celebrate, to not celebrate, to support something that is moral, to not support something that is immoral, etc. So that's the huge takeaway, is understanding free will and how important this is. And you have to know to say no or say yes. So there was something that I wanted to, and then Rick, you touched on, novelty, and everyone wants the new stuff. Yep. And the news. And this is interesting because this is a bastardized version. It's an inversion of a really deep philosophical concept from Plato. and Aristotle. Aristotle was Plato's student.
Mm-hmm.
They called it the nous, or the news. It's spelled a couple different ways. N-U-S or N-O-U-S, but it's pronunciate as news. Almost sounds like news, right?
Yep.
Or what is new. And what this concept is, it's ultimately the higher mind of humanity that understands nature and universal truth and acts on it.
Right.
So it's not only the pursuit of high knowledge, it's the activation of that knowledge in the application of life, which is wisdom. So that kind of trigger, when you were talking about that triggered something, right? Everyone wants to know the news, when what we really need to understand is educating ourselves on the nous and acting on that.
Right.
That higher universal truth, baby. That's
the real shit. Yeah, and that takes it from the base level consciousness to the higher mind, the human realm.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Especially when you consider what is, put out there as the news it's not even truth at all, let alone higher truth. It's fabrication, it's mind control, it's absolute mental sewage that people are just pouring into their minds.
Yeah. Oh, I agree. I can't remember the last time I watched news. Sat down and watched news. It's been so long, and I would never go to that source for anything resembling truth. So it's just, I can't imagine people just wired in during COVID. I know people are just glued to their TVs and just hanging on every word that was being said, and it messed them up. I mean, they really did. I mean, they were in such a fear state. It was just crazy. I don't even know why people would tune in anything resembling what we're talking about, like news wise. I mean, and you were right, Will. People are just in this reactive state, and I think people have to realize they want you in that state. It's by design that we are in this state. Like, they have humanity in this state. Maybe you can kind of touch on that. This is what they want. They want people not consciously thinking, not putting any, not really sitting back and really taking in information and going through it, like the trivia method that we speak about. I've spoke about it. There's a way to sift through the information and get to real wisdom, I would say. And people are just in this reactive state. And I always tell people that if you're in this reactive state, there's no real conscious thinking going on. You're not really taking in great, quality information. They want you in this state because you're very controllable when you're in that state.
I got something I would love to chime in here on this. There's a natural law not listed in the Kabbalion, but is extremely useful and relevant, and it is that awareness reveals choice. But also, choice reveals awareness through experience, right? That it works both ways. It's a feedback loop. And so, if you're only educating and informing yourself through the news, you're going to be limited simply by default because your awareness is so limited. That's a big part of the mind control. They limit the awareness and the true usable information that people have. Then they don't have to forcibly coerce every step of the way because people aren't going to take a choice they don't even know that they have. Right?
Good point. Yep.
And then just even taking it back to this holiday thing now, coming full circle. Look, and I'd like to draw a parallel between that and what we saw with COVID. Who was the two entities that was mostly controlling how that actually played out? Obviously, the big one is the media, the news, right? Well, the media is always talking about every holiday. They, it's like, oh, it's that time of the year, folks. So make sure you go out and get those chocolates and the roses and blah, blah, blah. And they're just like, it's just what people do. So you don't want to be some weirdo that doesn't participate in mass cult rituals, do you? So just be a good citizen and go out there and do it. So they're, kind of using culture and collectivism and the fear of missing out and all this sort of thing to influence the behaviors of people, and then the other side of it, the other number two, would be the corporations, who are also largely controlled by the same people. The same people that, I mean, the corporations largely control the government, but it's not like, it's a simplistic way of looking at it, saying corporations control the government. Actually, it's dark occultists who control corporations, and banks control the governments. You know, it's nuanced, but regardless, so you've got the news telling you what to do, and then you've got the corporations kind of like, it's the more boots on the ground, because people aren't at the news station. They're not talking with these anchors. They're out and about in the world. They're going into stores. And so you go to, like you said earlier, you go to get groceries. You can't go get groceries in the month like of January or February with just getting bombarded by pink and red plastic crap and sugar and all sorts of packages. And there's the parallel with the COVID thing as well. And it was, because it was like the news is telling you really should wear a mask. And then you go to the store and they're like, sir, you need to put your mask on, sir. Yep. You know what I mean?
You're so right.
That's the point I wanted to make.
No,
that's a good one.
That is great points. Yeah. Do you want anything to this, Will? Because I mean, I know I talk about this so much, and I will keep talking about this, because this is, I think, at the crux of we're getting to the meat now, I say, and where metal meets bone kind of thing is that people wonder how we got to where we are. And I hope people are asking this, and maybe they're not. I don't know. I know I am, and I know a lot of people I hang around are asking, like, and talk about this, like how we got to the state that we're in. And it was, I think, little by little, and there's a lot of factors going in, but we definitely are being controlled. And I've told people, like, you're up against dark, occultists, you're up against satanic people, and some people lose their mind when I say that. They really have trouble hearing that, but it doesn't make it less true. Like, I mean, if you don't want to hear it, I'm sorry, but that is where you're up against. It just is. I mean, it's got a satanic agenda written all over it.
Yeah, it does. And I'll say this too. I'll put an emphasis on, there are social engineers. There are dark occultists. Absolutely, 100%. There's all the evidence in the world to kind of go down that hole. But it's also your neighbor, the people in your community, the general public.
Even
you. Yeah, even you. Yeah. So, but that's how you have to look at it. Everyone's controlled opposition until no one is. You have to, and that includes myself, you have to constantly fine-tune your awareness. The Agent Smith effect is always in play, because the social engineers and the dark occultists would have no power unless the population gives it to them, abdicates it, and that's exactly what they're doing. So
that's a great point.
It's a huge endeavor. Ultimately, like you guys have touched on, it comes down to dysfunction. These holidays are perfect hooks to get people to identify with groupthink, right? I mean, you can look. It's actually, there was a funny holiday that just kind of recently passed, Groundhog Day, right? This is kind of
another one, that's
localized to Pennsylvania. I don't know if in Canada they have that up there, but what is Groundhog Day, right? Punxsutawney Phil comes out of his little hole or his little hut, and if he sees his shadow, then it's 6 more weeks of winter. It's something like that. But there's always 6 more weeks of winter. He always goes back in, and it's this huge kind of like ritual thing. Anyways, they made a good movie about it. Yep. And I would say the majority of people are living Groundhog Day. This is what society is living, the ritual of Groundhog's Day. But as far as identifying with groupthink, not only do we have the holidays. I remember when I was younger, you had like the main holidays, but now not only is it February where we had Valentine's Day, Groundhog's Day, it's Black History Month, it's Pink Awareness, Breast Cancer Month. Like every month has multiple filters to identify with for the groupthink mentality. right? And these are like
Yes.
traps and snares just to identify the ego to the collective. And ultimately it is for dysfunction and dis-ease. And that, that doesn't necessarily mean on a physical level. Like we're talking about psychic wellness.
Hmm. That's a great point. I'm just thinking about all the holidays now. And even when I was in school, like you had your major holidays, but now it seems like now the kids are out of school all the time because of some weird holiday. Like they just keep adding more days and more holidays and all the different holidays. And I'm glad you brought that up because hopefully people will sit back and think, like how many holidays they do have now, and throughout the course of a year. And you're right, Will, they got one for everything. Like, and it's really interesting. And you're right about groupthink. We were just talking about the Super Bowl, like, how people get these groups mindsets with sports and entertainment and you name it. You have people that are, in this state of thinking and by design, like you said, it's a great method they use.
Well, a lot of it's, to kind of bog down the individual and make them feel powerless, right? I mean, there's
Right.
so much stimuli, so much going on. It's just all about perception management for behavior control. So the empowering comes when you educate yourself and then you have that awareness, just like Logan elegantly said. Awareness reveals choice, and choice reveals awareness.
Hmm.
This is the ladder of enlightenment.
Yeah. And one of the tricks that they
I,
do is against people is that they give you the illusion of a choice, but there's not really a choice. I notice they do that a
yeah,
lot too. I think of politics especially, just because it's kind of relevant to what's going on around, with the elections and all this stuff. But this illusion of choice, but you can apply it to so many different things other than just that. That you have this illusion of choice, but it's really the same thing. So they're even controlling this illusion of choice. But I'm glad you guys are bringing up what real choice is and what that means.
yeah. This just kind of struck me too. I don't know if there's something to this or not. Yeah, I just literally something that I kind of thought of. But if everything is all about getting you to go along with the herd, right? It's all about compliance, and as I was saying before, like culture and using that herd mentality, exploiting that collectivist part of the psyche is much more effective than coercing people and making them feel like they're forced to do it. They would much rather feel like they're choosing that
Hmm.
by choosing conformity, right? Well, often things like government itself is a form of collectivism. Say like nationalism, for example, is like people wrongly associate or conflate themselves with a nation state. Like, oh, we kicked the Germans' butts in World War II. And it's like, dude, you weren't even born. What do you mean we? You know what I mean?
Right.
Like this kind
Yeah.
of thing. But what if holidays, I mean, of course they serve many purposes. But what if one of the purposes of all these holidays is to give a positive experience of a collective ritual to
Mm.
offset the negative experience of doing things that are overtly bad for the
Right.
common good, essentially. Because think about what a strong emotional attachment people have to holidays, like the nostalgia of Christmas, right?
Hmm.
All of those little just people just revel in those details of going around and looking at Christmas lights, all the smells, the peppermint and the tree, and just like it's
Yeah.
so an engagement of the senses with colorful lights and smells and good food taste, right? All of that seems like it's kind of by design. Not that again that there's anything inherently wrong with that, and of course traditions have been around longer as just a natural thing. There's nothing
Hmm.
wrong with that, but I'm just saying I think they make these particularly like fabricated traditions that are really engaging on all of those sensual levels to create this very strong emotional attachment to them. And so that people are like, if you start trying to question certain these traditions, people would get they would think you're crazy, right? Like, oh, this was such an or like even like something like Santa Claus, right? Maybe we shouldn't lie to our children. What do you mean? This was an important part of my childhood, and blah blah blah. This kind of thing.
That's a good point. And I was kind of giggling when you said how people identify with things, because you hear that with sports, even how people. I was watching some videos came up on YouTube of people just going crazy when their teams lose and stuff like that, and like they identify it as their team, and I'm just like,
yeah, we won. We won. Really? What position do you play, guy?
And like, I always say to myself, like, what kind of mind control are people under when they identify as they're part of the team, but they make you feel that way? That's how they suck you in. And you're part of this team. It's part of your city. It's part of your country, and then blah blah blah. That's really interesting how they're doing that. And I'm glad you brought that up. Actually, that's really fascinating, because people were losing their mind with teams. Like, I was just like, wow, like, and really get emotional and spend a lot of money on it. And it's a really fascinating thing that you brought up.
Yeah, that was great, Logan. That had my wheels turning, because you're so right. It's subversive sorcery. It's covert. Like, there's like, you take the holidays where there's no direct overt harm or violation, but it's still keeping people off the path of truth. So it's almost like this. It's just
participating in the collective.
Yep. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, like a ritual. Yeah, like participating in a ritual.
That's got to be part of it. It's like, as soon as you're done with one of these holidays, bam, they put all the shit up, and then they're already rolling out the next thing.
Yep.
Yeah, that's why
carousel.
Exactly, dude. The feedback loop, right? I mean, humanity is under illusion and disillusion, right? So it's like, not only do they lack the understanding of natural law and morality, they are totally subdued into falsity, just total artificial mental constructs that just are complete misdirection, that keep them off the human path of meaning and purpose.
Mm-hmm. Very true.
And to me, that is the soul trap. When people talk about the soul trap, right? Oh, well, when you die, don't go towards the light, because that's the soul trap, and you'll reincarnate here. It's like, the soul trap is actual life living in this incarnation, because you're not on the path, you're not doing the work, you're not progressing, evolving, accomplishing your dharma. You're not learning the lessons. You're at school, but you're not learning the lessons.
Right. And maybe I could get you to kind of explain to listeners as well, because you said dharma. I'm sure people know what karma is. Maybe you can break down dharma, because maybe they've never even heard this word.
Yeah. So karma means Sanskrit. It means action, and dharma is it. The etymology is right behavior. So it actually means moral law and morality. I equate that to purpose. It's like it's what you're here to accomplish in a moral capacity.
It's
right? So it's like,
universal and the individual purpose.
Dude, exactly. Wow. It's like, you didn't incarnate here to be, to learn how to bake the sweetest cake. Sure, that's great. You experience that, but that's not dharma. That's not dharma. You are here for a major lesson or lessons. It's your soul path, your purpose.
Mm-hmm. No, I'm glad thank you for breaking that down, because I think that's really important that people understand the difference, because and you make a great point. You guys are making amazing points. I'm really learning a lot and enjoying this, actually, because I love learning stuff and information. So talking about this is so powerful, and I think people listening really need to listen to what we're saying, because how many people, like you said, Will, are they're not on their, their dharmic path, I guess you could call it. I mean, and I agree. Like, how I used to always question that when I was like all the time when I was growing up, and you know, as long as I can remember, I'd be like, why? And I think everybody has asked themselves this at some point, like, why am I even here? Like, what is my purpose here? And I used to always think, like, this can't be life. Like, life can't be, you get like everyone else, you get a job, usually a job you hate, you don't even want to be doing. You do that for most of your life. You might get married, have a couple of kids because that's what you're expected to do. And it's like, this can't be, there's got to be a higher lesson here, or journey. And but they've locked people into this, like you said, like this kind of soul trap, or this feedback loop where you're just kind of doing this, going and going, like Groundhog Day. And I'm glad that we kind of touched on that, because like I wish people would really sit back and think, like, what do you like, find what your purpose is, I guess. And that's not probably not easy to do, but it's something I think that should be thought about, and you question.
Well, finding your
Right.
purpose takes self-love, self-respect, and attention.
That's true.
And
Yeah.
you have to come to know yourself, and that's a process.
Mhm.
This is one of the effects, what you were describing. This is one of the effects of materialism, right? That you ultimately can't know anything. You're here just for base pleasures and desires, and then you die, and that's it,
Yep.
right?
You're
So
right.
that's one of the effects of materialism. It's also solipsism as well.
Yeah. Yeah, you're so right. But because I want to try to, like, in at least the last little half hour or so, is kind of focus on solutions and stuff to get people on the right path. So I'm gonna probably steer it that way, so you guys know that near the end, because I don't want to just be all doom and gloom and not talk about solutions, because I'm hoping that people, as we speak, are taking this information in, and gets them thinking and questioning, and gets them on, at least trying to, nudge them onto the path, kind of thing, of looking into this even deeper. And because the problem I run into, Will, and I've brought this up many times too, is a lot of people really don't want to take the time to even look into what we're speaking about, or learn about any of the topics. I've run into so many people that they just don't seem to care. They are distracted with every other distraction that's out there, and that's what I think we're up against. So I would love to get both your guys' thoughts. Like, how do we get? I guess just put the information out there. It's the best you can hope for. Yes.
Well, yeah, but just I mean, you have to take in knowledge before you're ready to put it back out.
Agreed. Yep.
And in order to do that, you need to cultivate the right mindset to be able to receive information and process it accurately, because that's a big issue that I see is people's filters are all kinds of fucked up.
Oh yeah,
And
for sure.
and a big one that I want to talk about is looking at things very black and white, or doom and gloom, which to me is a very Abrahamic mindset. In other words, it was not a way that people thought or looked at things until the Abrahamic religions, really, that created this very like black and white, just all or nothing, these
Good
kind
and
of like
evil.
almost
Good and
yeah,
evil.
yeah,
Yep.
yeah, even good and evil. And that's not to say there's no such thing as good and evil, but that's such a very small aspect of the way reality operates. Reality is just what it is, and there's a little bit of good and evil in everything. It's all just a kind of a big spectrum. And so even just take, for example, going through this information to research for this, this interview here, I had to kind of remind myself of that, of like, it's just funny hearing all the different takes that people have. We're talking about the same thing, right? Valentine's Day. It's one topic, and you get all these different types of approaches and ways that people are filtering that information. And there's a lot of this like, it came from a satanic holiday, from paganism, and Christians shouldn't celebrate Valentine's Day because you don't know what you're participating in paganism, and just it's like, geez, man, it's just radicalized, you know. And then even like, you know, maybe who knows how much of that the information, as we spoke about earlier, is accurate regarding this this ritual that it kind of all started from, or you know, festival, I guess you could say. Um, Maybe some of the activities there were a little bit unsavory. That doesn't make paganism bad, or that like, oh, Christianity cleansed humanity from paganism because we are all a bunch of godless savages. You see how that's this very like black and white thinking of
Right. Yep.
the whole world was in darkness. There was no morality. There was no goodness, you know, uncivilized, et cetera, Christianity came along and civilized society and gave us morals. It's just ridiculous. But that's how a lot of people think, even if they don't even realize that's their programming. They might not even be able to articulate that or recognize that, but that's what they're implying in a lot of things that I've heard people say in having discussions about this thing. I know I'm rambling a little bit, but it's really so important.
Yeah.
So it just like, keep that in mind when you're not only listening to what other people are telling you about something, but then what kind of conclusions are you coming to? Are you having a knee-jerk reaction to something and saying, oh, that, you know, that festival sounds terrible. That was probably all just really bad and evil and wicked. And no, like maybe some of it wasn't super good. You know, humans weren't perfect by any means. When have humans ever been perfect?
Exactly.
Christians certainly aren't perfect. Pagans weren't perfect. So even this is what I'm saying. This idea of perfection and flawed, like humans are just flawed, we're sinners. It's all Abrahamic mind virus, man. It's not healthy thinking. We need to purge that shit out of our thought processes in order to more accurately see reality. And I'll leave it at that.
That was so well said. Thank you. Wow. You're so right too.
Yeah, well said.
That, Will? Wow. Yeah, well said.
I think that was great. I'll try to add some tidbits after that. And, you know, touching on this time of the year, February, you know, it's a time for purging and purification and the beginning stages of renewal, because that's what spring is, right? Spring is renewal and rebirth, for the individual, you know, for your mentation and your body and your emotional state. That's what the winter was the dark. That's when you go internal and you do, you know, deep shadow work, and then you purge that out during this time period and you purify. And, you know, this is where a lot of these festivals have kind of their roots in those concepts of purification. And actually, during the break, I did a little research, and that's what the baby Cupid supposed to represent, is purity. And, you know, that's from the Christian church kind of giving it that aspect, but also goes into the Greek tradition as well, culture. But the takeaway ultimately is knowledge and self-work. Like it really does come down to your mind and what you think you believe and what you subscribe to, and are you questioning that, and are you challenging yourself? Because in this modern age, everyone was raised with some type of programming and conditioning, you know, some more so than others.
Yep.
And the majority of people don't even think about that and don't even start that process of questioning and trying to analyze and synthesize that. It's just, as Logan was saying, it's the Agent Smith effect. These are just programs. The Abrahamic program is one of the most prevalent. Even if people don't think so, they don't know until they actually start diving into their own psychic hygiene. And
right.
Looking at you have to look at the dark as well. Like, this is what nature is. This is what the self is. It's both light and dark. So there's positives and negatives on both sides. You can learn from the dark. You can appreciate the light from the dark, and vice versa.
Yeah.
So looking at the doom and gloom in society is one thing. Having control over yourself and not letting it be an anchor within your own psychology and having these negative emotions anchor you down into the doom or gloom, into a defeatist and victim mentality, that's where you don't want to be. This is the whole purpose of doing shadow work. So gaining that knowledge and then applying it, the application of knowledge is where the power lies, the empowerment. And that is ultimately wisdom, applied knowledge. The absence of knowledge and truth is ignorance. And this is where a lot of people are in. They won't even consider or even attempt to listen to a conversation like this. So
no, I agree. But that's
For
the
the-
problem that we're up against. That's the problem that we're up against, though, guys, is that it's frustrating to me, and I'm sure it is to you guys, is that people just seem to be happy in their ignorance. Like it gets frustrating. It really does. I would be lying if I said I don't get frustrated, because I'll even people around me in person, I'll talk to them about these things, and they just tune right out, and that's what we're up against. I've always been somebody that's so hungry for information. I think people would agree with that. So I do this show. I love learning, and I love learning and challenging my own beliefs and my own thoughts. And I'm willing to definitely change things as I learn more. Most people are not even willing to do that. They don't question anything. That's what we're up against. That's the frustrating part, is that as people seem to be happy in this ignorant bliss. And it just, I don't know how you battle that.
What can tie together what both of you guys are saying right now is about integrating the darkness. That's the key. That's what I'm trying to say, is everything in nature has a purpose. Nothing is for waste. Everything here, the universe is a university. Everything is here to teach you something. And to ignore half of the equation, that's darkness, and only focus on the light. And yes, that includes the darkness within you. That darkness has a purpose. And by ignoring it and denying it, not only are you not using it as the tool that it's meant to be, but then it through your unconscious behavior is becoming the monster under your bed that comes out and rules you, because you're ignoring it. You're not mastering it. And people don't have that inner monster within themselves that's been cultivated that they can unleash against evil. And so when you bring this stuff up, they're like, oh, I don't want to talk about that because I don't have the monster in me that can handle that. I'm not equipped for that. So we take this childish mentality that, oh, if I just don't look at the monster, he's not really there. That's not how reality works. In fact, turning your back to a monster is a good way to make sure you get eaten. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Yep. You're right. You're right. And the lies that they tell people, because you heard that in the New Age movement, where they tell you, I've heard people say this to me directly, so I know that's it's being said, is don't look at the dark stuff. Like, if you look at the dark stuff, you're going to attract. I hear this, and I've heard it many times, and I'm attracting it to me. And I'm just like, this is just information. It's what I choose to do with this information is what makes it right, good or bad. I mean, I don't. But people are in this mindset. Don't look at the dark stuff. And I'm like, how do you know love without hate? How do you know light without dark? I mean, there's this balance, and I'm glad we got to this, because I'm starting to talk about this even more in my shows. Is that, like you said, look, it's a spectrum and it's a balance. And every time I talk about this, I think of the yin and yang symbol. That's what comes to my mind. That there's a touch of both in each, and
both empower the other one too.
Exactly.
As well.
Right.
And like to what that's great points there, Rick, and to what Will was saying, as far as like knowledge is the key, is the answer, is the solution, because you take everything back to the trivium. The trivium is your operating system as a human being. There's no getting around it. So now take the topic of today, tradition. What we're talking about is unconscious behaviors. You're in the action phase of the trivium, without the mental phase in alignment. You don't know the why of what you're doing. And that's always going to lead to, it's like stumbling around in the dark. That's how you get hurt.
Right.
Because you're just taking action without the eyes to navigate and actually understand what's happening.
Right.
Nailed it.
Nailed it. Yep.
Absolutely, man. And you know, that is the definition of education. To lead one out of the darkness into the light of knowledge.
Yeah.
So that's what, you know, since we've been we had this Valentine Day theme going on. I think something to talk about is just at least the three Greek types of loves. There's really 8, but there's three overarching, right? We talked a lot about Eros, which represents Valentine's Day, which is that erotic love. It's fleeting, it fades off. It's part of the lower mind.
Quick. Yeah. I don't want to interrupt, but the Eros is the Cupid's arrows. The arrows is the Eros.
Yes. Yep. Absolutely.
Little wordplay.
I love it. Yeah, no, that's great. And then we have philia or philos, which is, like brotherly love, family love. Philadelphia, the city of
philosophy.
Brotherly love.
This is
philosophy, cool. The love of wisdom, knowledge and wisdom, right? So philos, all 3 of us have philos for each other as brothers in this endeavor. And then of course you have the third one, and the Greeks were very much promoting that humanity needed to move from eros to philos, like on a societal level, because in that philos, that affectionate love, romantic love is integrated within there. Obviously, a man and a woman or whatever. It's not only family and brotherly, sisterly love. It's also romantic love. So it's a higher awareness, a higher mind. It's reaching for that nous level of consciousness. But then the highest form of love that they had was agape. And this was a selfless love. It was a love for nature, for universal law. It was a love for humanity. It was ultimately a love for morality and right action and truth. This, and again, same principle applies. When you're in agape, then all the other loves have been integrated into that. So it is a hierarchy. And when you get to that agape and you're in that service to truth, you are not only serving yourself and serving others, you're serving what is right. You're serving humanity, truth, right. God, source, creation. So
absolutely.
And this is the type of information that they just don't want people to understand.
Truth being the ultimate unifier is that's what it is. It's not just truth, it's love for truth. That's what brings us together. Because when you have that love for truth, you will seek it fiercely and live yourself in alignment with that. And that naturally brings people on a more harmonious path as a society, as a collective. So it's the love for truth and the truth of love.
Right.
Because love and truth are just the 2 sides of the same coin. Think about it. Truth is the all, right? It's everything. So there's that connectedness, that unified aspect. But then love is almost like it's the feminine version of that. It's the actual force, the energetic force that binds the galaxy together, like in Star Wars.
It's the care. It's the nurturing.
It's the care. Yes, exactly. So they're all oneness, but in different ways. That is the essence of masculine and feminine. They're separate, but they're the same. They're just different expressions of it.
Exactly.
That's the alchemical wedding right there.
Yep.
100%. 100%.
I'm writing down so much right now. You should like I'm scribbling away. I'm writing down all the stuff you guys are saying because I want to look into this deeper. So this is incredible stuff that you guys are talking about and bringing. Thank you so much. And Phalos, that's the one I will say that's the love of brothers, the brotherly love, and I think that's what humanity is really lacking. Right? Is this care towards other people? People are in such like. If you just observe people, and we talked about this with the consumerism, and people are very in the just uh anything that's good for them. They like it, other people be damned kind of thing. What for them is all that matters, and that kind of mindset. And until we move out of this, will and get out of that mindset and get into caring and really deeply caring about everyone in humanity and what we're leaving behind for the children coming behind us. Like this is the key that we're talking about. I think we really got into the meat of this is we have to move into that next step, which is what we seem to be fighting against.
Well,
planting the tree, knowing that you may never enjoy its shade yourself.
For sure. Yeah.
Dude, absolutely.
Right action
and this
for future generations.
Yep.
Exactly. And this is what it comes down to. It comes down to conscious parenting. And we're talking about tradition. The traditions we have now are based on ignorance, deception, cowardice, immorality. And we need to have a tradition based on agape, truth, morality,
Yes.
Right.
union with nature, harmony, symbiosis. That is the tradition we want. We want a tradition of courage, not cowardice. And the only way we're going to break that is if individuals educate themselves and come into that higher awareness and then influence and educate the youth. Right? That's what parent and children are. It's a fractal. It's a microcosm of the holographic universe, right? You
For
have
sure.
two people have a child, that is a fractalization of them. So
Right.
of course, what their psychic hygiene and what they know and their level of awareness has an influence on their children's 100%. So
Yeah. Great point. Great point. And I guess because I was saying, like, how do we get people? And I keep always asking myself this, like, how do you get people to like even look into what we're talking about and to care enough to look into it and seek out this information and start, implementing it in their own life, doing that shadow work. And I just, I guess it's just you have to keep putting the information out there. Just keep putting it out, keep putting it out. That's why I do it. And it reminds me because I always hear that, that I remember I think I heard Mark Passio talking about the quote in the Bible, like turn the other cheek. And a lot of people take that as, if somebody does an action to you, you turn the other cheek and kind of not act. And I think it was Mark that said, no, that basically means he interpretates it. God, I can't pronounce that word. Is basically, if you bring this information to people and they throw it on the ground, you pick it back up and you give it back to them and you keep doing that over and over and over again. And that's how I kind of look at how we're putting the information out there. And if people still turn their back, well, you keep putting it out. It's just, you got to keep doing it, keep doing it. So that's why I like that kind of quote. And I think it was Mark that broke it down that way, that you got to keep, and that's what turn the other cheek means.
Well,
Yeah.
this is what the One Great Work's all about. I have a phrase: no leaders, more artists. And this is what we need to do. Talk about activating and embodying the nous, right? That is the creative higher mind expression. This is what we're trying to do. We're using magic, real world magic. We're using our creative capabilities and our creative essence to create a message, to create art, to influence and inspire people to look within themselves and to abandon their dogmatic, erroneous belief systems that are condoning harm and violence and slavery. Right. So that's why it is the One Great Work, because it's a tremendous endeavor.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Here's something that I've contemplated a lot is to your question, Rick, about how do we get people to care. I don't know that there's anything that we can do to make people care, because ultimately we can put all the knowledge and tools and everything to help empower other people. But if they don't care, it doesn't matter. They don't want it. Yep. So what it comes down to, and this is not a popular answer, it's not what a lot of people want to hear, but I've contemplated this so much in life because I've wondered that thing, like, how do we make people care? It's something that's so intrinsic, right? That has to come from within. And what I think it really comes down to is if somebody doesn't have that natural agape within themselves, like some people, I think I've always had that, even though I was born and indoctrinated and I had many years of programming to undo, I always had that curiosity naturally.
Me too.
Not everyone has that. I think for those people, what it's just going to have to come down to is how much suffering are they going to endure before they finally understand that they need to make a change within themselves and start caring about truth, because it's that ignorance that is causing their suffering. And it's it's only getting worse. It's only getting worse. And so that's, it makes me think of that classic line of it's always darkest before the dawn.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, because things have to get so bad until nothing else is even like no other option is left except for accepting that truth is supreme, morality is the most important thing, and going against it and going against natural law is invariably going to cause destruction, chaos, pain, and death.
Yep.
That's a fact, man.
Yeah, absolutely.
Indefinitely. That's exactly how it operates, because we're talking about natural law.
That's what it does.
If you keep that's what it does, man. It is justice, cosmic justice. If you keep putting your hand on the flame and you haven't recognized that it's because you are putting your hand on the flame, it will burn away your flesh and it will keep burning away.
Right.
And just because someone dies doesn't mean it's over.
Yep.
Sorry to cut you off.
That's okay.
Go ahead, Logan. I know you're gonna go ahead. You're saying what kind of brain dead person?
I didn't know if I lost signal. What kind of brain dead person has their hand in the fire and sitting there and saying, "I don't give a fuck about truth. Fire doesn't burn me. I make up what reality is." That's what people are doing now. That's what we're living in now. It's the definition of insanity.
Yep.
Exactly, dude.
And you're right.
Yep.
Yep. People have to point the finger. I keep saying this. Maybe stop pointing that finger outwardly. And it's like you said, Logan, like, how much suffering are people going to endure before they take that finger and stop pointing it at everything around them and point it squarely at themselves? And I had to do that. I still do that. Like, people just, they don't want to do that. They don't want to maybe think maybe you're the problem. Like, maybe your way of thinking is the problem. And people just don't want to do that. I mean, they fear that. But that's where this real healing begins, is when you're willing to do that. And that's why they call it the great work. And it's work. It's got the word work in there for a reason. It's just,
they call it getting humbled, right? When somebody falls on their ass, it's called getting humbled. See, people don't want to look at themselves because they have such a weak, fragile ego and a sense of their sense of self that they can't even handle admitting that they've made a mistake, that they've done something wrong, and taking responsibility for that, because they've got an extraordinary amount of wounds around that they've had to build up their false sense of self to overcompensate for that. But it's all about that natural law lesson. That's what's going to humble somebody, to be like, okay, I just ate shit, and maybe I'm not as bad as I thought I was, and maybe I need to just shut the fuck up and learn something.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm looking at the time, guys. I can't believe the second hour is almost over. Wow, we got like 2 minutes. So I want to give both of you a chance to let everybody know. You can go first. Let everybody know what you got coming up, where they can find your work, anything you want people to know. The floor is yours. You get 1 minute, and then I'll pass it to you, Logan.
Excellent. Thanks, Rick. It was a pleasure conversing with you guys. Thanks to all the viewers. You could find my work at willkeller.com, WILLKELLER. You can check out my presentations, my podcast, and my live shows that are currently active. So you can get the dates for that on there. And I'm also on the One Great Work Network. People can go there and check out the great content creators. Thank you very much, Rick. Appreciate you.
You're very welcome. Yes, I appreciate you too. And go ahead, Logan. Where can people find all your work?
Outstanding. Yeah, definitely go follow Will. He does amazing work. Always a pleasure conversing with you two wise gentlemen. This was a really great and fun conversation. And I learned a lot as well. So hopefully everyone in the audience enjoyed this. And please, I would be honored if you'd come check out thewizardfactory.com. All of my links are right there at the top, easy to find me. So you can go check out my YouTube channel, the various social media pages and such. All my presentations are there as well. So yeah, go check it out.
Awesome. And thank you guys once again so much. I'm looking forward to having you on again and break down St. Patrick's Day. I think this is going to make a great little series, and I appreciate both of you so much. I learned so much from both of you, and thank you so much for taking the time to come and chat with me and my audience. Thank everyone who's listening and comes in and tunes in every week. You guys are incredible, and I hope you take in the information that was talked about today and you look into it for yourself and you start asking yourself the hard questions and start taking in this information. So thank you so much, both of you. Thank you, everyone else. Have a great week. I'll be back Thursday, Crypt, Rick, and Jonathan show, same time, same studio, and I'll see you then. Take care, guys.
Take care. Thanks.
You're listening to Revolution Radio.
This play has all been cast. Do not recognize them. Do not know the past. Wasn't so long ago a different tale was told. The ancient script has been rewritten. No products are to be sold. Yeah, they got you where they want you. Yeah, they put a spell on you. They're scared by these illusions, this new spooky ad campaign. Everywhere you turn, it's always pounding in your brain. Come, do not go to beaches, do not breathe the ocean air. Yeah, they stole $6 trillion just to show how much they cares. Yeah, they got you where they want you. Yeah, they put a spell on you. Yeah, they got you where they want you. We're flipping through all them channels, programming mind control. Try to convince the world that the humans got no souls. Yeah, they're only flesh and blood. Yeah, they're only dirt and mud. Our lies conspire to douse the fire, inspire with the breath of life. Yeah, they got you where they want you. Yeah, they put a spell on you. lockstep marching doctors with their dangling stethoscopes. Their science they claim the final solution, the only human hope. Or keep you from your neighbors, all muzzled up in the mask. Yeah, you take them off 'cause you got no cough, but you don't know who to ask. Yeah, they got you where they want you. Yeah, they put a spell on you. Yeah, they got you where they want you. Yeah, they put a spell on you. Oh, one thing is crystal clear. Can I live in fear? 'Cause if we do, the human spirit will surely disappear.